yay, boo, it's lots of fun to do. If you like it, holla yay. If you don't, you holla boo.
Welcome to a special edition of Yay Boo on the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. I'm Mike McGuire from McGuire on Wrestling, and joining me, our good friend, Joe Aguinaldo.
Yay!
I was waiting for it that time. I've finally gotten used to it. That's Joe's signature calling card now. Which I hope you do that whenever you're called anywhere, like a meeting at work or
Actually,
Joe Aguinaldo. Yay!
Actually, I do.
Kind of a Kermit the Frog complex, really, but
Pretty much. Yeah.
It's not the worst. It's not the worst.
I try to be court jester when it comes to meetings because there's so much stuff going on that someone's got to be court jester and keep things light.
Let's be honest. There's never been a work meeting that's ever actually been important or actually accomplished anything ever.
No, never.
Seriously. All right. Well, we are here to talk specifically about AEW's Revolution pay-per-view. Took place on Sunday night from Los Angeles, California. As we're doing this, WWE Raw is emanating right now from Madison Square Garden in New York City. So we couldn't be literally further from a polar opposite as far as U.S. cities go, which is kind of neat. But at the same time, we also couldn't be more polar opposite from pay-per-view or PLE presentations from what we saw a week prior from WWE versus AEW's. Joe, before we get into the nitty-gritty, I just want your overall thoughts for watching the show. Was it worth it for you?
You know what? I thought it was a good pay-per-view. There were things that I didn't like, which I guess we'll get into as we get into the card. But for the most part, it was pretty good. It was entertaining.
Yeah, for me, the only downside on these is when they're on Sundays. I got a Monday morning show to do, so I know I'm not going to be awake and alert for all of it, so I had to play catch-up today for the back half of it with the main event, and also the steel cage match, which I'm kind of glad I paced myself between the rest of the pay-per-view and those two matches, because dear Lord, was there a lot going on.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like one of the things that I've always had an issue with when it comes to AEW pay-per-views is the length of them. And especially now because like Tony Khan seems to be putting one out every month. So, I might have excused the length, if it was once every other month or whatever. But when you're doing a pay-per-view per month, these 4-hour epics, 5 hours if you include the 0 hour, like no, no, thank you.
Still a little bit of time now between their next big show, which of course is the All In Texas show later on this summer. Yep. But there will be ones building up beforehand. Okay, we're going to get to some of your feedback out there listening on our Celebrate Wrestling Facebook page as we play Yay Boo. Let's go basically match by match here. I think we can, we're going to skip the 0 hour, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there was the Jericho angle with Bandito and what's his brother's name? Gravity there. Gravity,
yes, that's right. Yeah. Who's,
I'm sorry, could be the most talented wrestler in the world, but that's a Party City costume. That's like Spirit Halloween astronaut. When he was coming to the ring, I legit thought it was like a parody character at first because I was like, okay, this guy's pretending to be a space. Oh no, that's what he does. All right. Cool.
Yeah, that whole thing. Let's skip the 0 hour, please.
All right. We do have to give a shout out though to the Rizzler showing up with Orange Cassidy because for the people that like that sort of thing, they were loving it.
Yeah, that's true.
There was a lot of people loving it there at the show. Okay, let's get into the main card here for AEW's Revolution 2025. Starting off with Hangman Adam Page taking on MJF. And we start off with Hangman's music, but psych! It's actually MJF. Classic little twist. Not bad. They get into it, and of course, it turns into just what you'd expect from an MJF Adam Page match, I think, at this point, where they're just pulling everything out they possibly can. Hangman is this, like, maniacal, sadistic freak of a wrestler, whereas MJF will pull out some really, really harsh, abrasive, and devastating moves, like the nuts to the face.
That was pretty devastating.
Is this guy even trying anymore? Like, the spot that everybody seems to be talking about coming out of this match, and they can't believe they let it happen, was the tombstone onto the chair on the outside of the ring, where they did the reversal tombstone setup a couple times. The two of them did. And then MJF ended up spiking Hangman onto the chair. And Hangman does get into the ring by the 10 count, which, again, these delayed 10 counts, I get it. It builds drama, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But I just don't know. Especially when Hangman comes back to actually win the match.
Yeah, you had to, I guess, suspend some disbelief on that. But, and that chair shot looked really bad. It's like, I hope Page is okay.
There was a lot of stuff that looked terrifying in this show throughout the night here. A little tribute to the Angel's Wings from Christopher Daniels as well that Hangman got on MJF before hitting the buckshot lariat. What was it? Was it 3 or 4 buckshot lariats that he hit?
I think it was like 3.
Yeah, it was a lot of buckshot lariats.
But you know what? Even that, I think it was that Angel's Wing, but like there was one point in the match where Hangman did something to MJF and it looked like MJF landed right on his face. And I was like, ooh, that didn't look good either.
Well, if you're going to land on anything. We move then to our second match on the card, which was the somewhat anticipated TBS Championship match between Mercedes Mone and Momo Watanabe. Fun to say, however, a lot of people saying build to this match, just not there.
No,
as far
not
as
at all.
goes. Now, I will say this. They did get the crowd into the match, which is what you want to do with a wrestling match, but it felt like it took a long time. And, of course, Mercedes Mone, your defending champion, still again. I don't think anybody saw Momo taking this title. Did you?
No, not at all. In fact, like, you're right. Like, this was probably the match I was, let's say, least interested in. Not because I don't not like Mone or Watanabe. It was just like, this just seemed like a random match, but they did wrestle a pretty good match. And at the end, I was into it. So kudos to them for that. But yeah, like this was one of those matches where it was like, okay, sure, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, they do have a prior history. I get all that too. But again, it was one of those things where you have to be locked in to everything AEW is doing to understand any of the rivalry that could have been in this match. Like I said, they got it through the match. I mean, you can go to an indie show and not know anything about anybody, and if the guys or girls that are working in there get the job done right, they can get you into the story of their match. And I think that's where this match actually succeeded, but it was just, again, a little bit of a cool down compared to some of the other storylines that were built up for the rest of the night. So we move forward to Swerve Strickland versus Ricochet, which everybody, including the people that assembled the pre-match promo video, were anticipating this to be a bloodbath. Everybody's coming to the ring covered in white gear. Even Prince Nana covered in white gear. That's usually the telltale sign. You show up to the ring covered in white, you're leaving covered in red. But we did not get really that. I mean, we got some brutal stuff on the outside. There was the stuff on the table, the announce table, but the big question mark was, how violent and gruesome is this going to get? And the answer was, not that much.
And you know what? In hindsight, that was probably a good thing because it made this match stand out. I thought this was a good match. Yeah,
there were some people calling it their match of the night. We'll get to in the feedback as well. Okay, we move on to, we should say that Swerve is now the number 1 contender for the AEW World Championship again after winning that match as well. Ricochet, I mean, heel Ricochet, I don't mind. I didn't think it was going to work as well as it has. But yeah, I like booing that guy. What can you do?
No, it's, you know what? It's, I don't even know if this is the right way to say it, but it's a fun character. Like,
you know what you can say? You can say, aha! We then go on to Kazuchika Okada defending his championship against Brody King. This was the Continental Championship. Yes. And Big Brody King there looking to make an impact. A lot of people said that they didn't see Brody winning this one, and wouldn't you know, they were right.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I personally think like they're saving Okada Omega, like for Omega somewhere down the line. Like that's the big match.
Well, it could be a certain type of match too as we continue with the night here. We'll get to that thought again here coming up in just a bit. But the tag team championships on the line, the Hurt Syndicate defending against the Outrunners. Hurt Syndicate easily.
Yeah, like you were saying that no one was expecting Brody King to beat Okada. I would say like times 10 for this match.
Yeah.
I didn't think the Outrunners had even a smidgen of a chance.
I mean, the Outrunners right now, a fun gimmick, but we've seen a fun gimmick before. I mean, this almost seems like a replacement, honestly, for maybe the Acclaimed even. Because let's face it, the Acclaimed the Raps were the gimmick. Nobody was going, oh, I can't wait to see a great Acclaimed match. Not that they were bad, but you were going to see the gimmick, and then you were hoping to hear the guys you like get a win and have another reason to cheer for them at the end of the night. I kind of felt that a little less for the Outrunners. Again, I don't mind the gimmick. I think it's silly. I think they're great in a lot of ways. But man, was it ever a mismatch.
Big time.
Just looking at them across the ring from each other too, So, I mean, I'm also very Hurt Syndicate biased. But yeah, that just seemed kind of like a placeholder, if nothing else. Then we move on to the Hollywood ending match. And this is where I and a lot of people feel this is where the pay-per-view had its turning point, where the volume got cranked up to 11. Timeless Toni Storm, we knew, defending her title against Mariah May, and this was be the war to settle the score, brother. This was going to be, whatever it was going to be, this was going to be the end. And these two went at it. Joe, I'm going to let you talk about this match because I want to get your thoughts as you were watching this just ridiculously violent, bloody happening.
Okay, I am normally not a fan of like crazy gimmick matches, glass and all that kind of stuff, but I'll admit I love this match. I thought this was just a fun match. Like Mariah May was bleeding like crazy, and Toni Storm made her look like she just got a scratch on her head. Like both women were, holy crap. Like Toni Storm, they both hit a gusher, but Toni Storm wins the gusher award for the night.
Okay, I don't feel comfortable with you referring to that in a women's match. Just can we?
Okay, sorry. Let me
bleed. Well, I don't feel good about that either.
Hang on. Let me rephrase this. So Mariah May bled a lot. Like she got a lot of color.
Yeah.
And Toni Storm like made Mariah May look like a walk in the park compared to the color that Toni Storm got. Insane. Sure. Like
I don't think there's a safe way we can say this, so we'll just
when they shot to Toni Storm when she first started bleeding, oh my god, I was like, holy crap. You know what that reminded me of?
Yeah.
The Dustin Rhodes versus Cody match when Dustin, remember how bad that was?
Right.
I would put Toni Storm in that category. That's how bad it was.
That was bad. Was bad. I also remember who was it? Brock Lesnar and Randy Orton.
Oh, yeah.
When elbow to the eyebrow.
Yeah.
Oh. There's been some bad ones, but yeah, this one for sure. I mean, went everywhere, did everything they possibly could. Over the top in a lot of ways. Toni Storm's gear, wearing those white stockings on top of everything else she was wearing, this looked like a multiple stab wound victim by the end of it. Like, it was awful. Like, just horrific in a lot of ways.
And here's the thing, like, part of what made this match work for me anyways is because, like, to me, this is still one of the best storylines that AEW has done in a while. Like, I was invested in Toni Storm. I was invested in Mariah May. So, and knowing sort of the background of that, like, again, story, all that stuff, that counts. And this match just made this, like, the story made this match even better.
Well, I'll never forget, and also kind of hating the memory, but loving the memory, being in Calgary when this thing all started. And that's, and I was front row for that. And you could hear Toni just screaming and crying as the shoe was cracked over her head. It was just, there's something about scary movies or dramatic, like, just when you hear a woman cry like that, like, it's just, to me, just extra chills. And to have that culminate in this match in the end, it was like, whew,
yeah, big
that was
time.
Something. We then take a breather. Psych. Again, there was no breather after this match either. That was the thing.
Not at all.
Okay, Takeshita versus Kenny Omega for the International Championship. These two guys you knew were going to give you a bit of a clinic when it comes to their style of wrestling, which they did. Although some people pointing out that Omega looked a little slower. It looked like he had changed things up a bit, whether that was to fit the angle or whether that's because of his actual injuries and just the way he is now. But a lot of people noticed that Omega was a lot different than the Kenny Omega we've seen in the past.
But you know what? That's okay. It was still a good match.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah. No. It's just, it's interesting when the fans are noticing that. Do you know what I mean?
See, it's strange because like I'll admit, like I've not watched a lot of AEW Dynamite over the last little while, right? But and I mean I've seen Kenny back in his like New Japan days and when he first started in AEW, but like watching Kenny yesterday, to me it was like, yeah, it's a different Kenny, but it was still really good. Like,
yeah. Well, that's just it. If you can adjust your style in a way that people don't think you're less than, but it is noticeably different, that's not the worst thing. And
nope,
I think that's what Omega managed to pull off here. But more importantly, also managed to pull off getting the international title from Konosuke Takeshita. Yeah. Sorry, I had a total brain fart there. The reason why is because we were just talking about the Okada match. So in my head now, I'm thinking that if AEW were to look at perhaps reducing some of their 97 championships, this could be a great match to cross the international and continental. No, we don't have to call it the intercontinental title. I know that. But if you were going to have a unifying match, this would be the one to have to lessen one title.
See, and here's the thing. I would also be curious because like even Okada is now wrestling differently compared to what he used to wrestle in New Japan. So I would be very interested to see what Omega and Okada, if this happens, I would be interested to see what they come up with.
And let's be real here. Does anybody really care about the Continental title? Honestly.
No, not really.
No disrespect to Okada. Okay.
No. But too many titles and it starts to lose meaning. Yeah. 100%.
Too much of a good thing is still too much. And that's what we've seen here. So I would be all for that unification match, perhaps at All In Texas. Just going to lay that little cherry out there as well. Why not?
Sure.
Okay, so we go from that intense competition for a championship to, again, a nice little... Oh, no, we're going to the steel cage match. Okay. Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher in, yes, an admittedly slightly taller steel cage than what we may be used to from other shows and other promotions. But this was still something pretty intense here. We have Kyle Fletcher come out first, climbing the cage and standing at the very top, waiting for Will Ospreay, who gets a very special entrance of his own. And then he climbs up to the other corner, and they're facing off against each other, corner to corner, from atop of the very high cage. The drama, the intensity, the waiting for each of them to gingerly come down into the ring to start the match. I loved it. I love the visual. I love the presentation. It's just too bad that they had to go inside the ring. You know, if anything, this would be an argument to put a roof on that thing for this match and have them fight on top of that just so they could start up high. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't want to see either guy get thrown off the damn thing either.
No. Although they did that themselves.
Well, again, we'll get to the Spanish Fly in a bit here, but it's one of those things where it was a great visual until it wasn't. And unfortunately, there's those times where it's like when you're at a live show and you see the big victory and everything else, then you have to see the person that lost like roll out of the ring and walk up the aisle afterwards. Do you know what I mean? It's that awkward pause. And that's what this was. It was an awkward pause for them to get into the ring. Again, not critiquing, just saying it slowed things down. Boy, did they turn it up once they got in there, though.
Yes, they did.
Okay, so I let you have some fun with the women's match here. I'm going to let you have some fun with this one, too. Takeaways for you from this redonkulous steel cage match.
You know what? Just intense. Like, I mean, like both Ospreay and Fletcher are at the tops of their games. And like, it was just like everything looked like it. Well, it either looked or sounded really good. So, and like, I'm going to fast forward to the end. I love the ending of this match where Fletcher's on his knees and basically saying, you know, F you, Ospreay, let's go. And Ospreay just hits him with that hidden blade. And I'm like, ooh.
Just screaming, I hate you. I hate you.
Yeah.
If Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair hated each other in the last seconds of their retirement match, right? Remember the I'm sorry, I love you?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he kicks him in the face. Instead it was, I hate you, and now I'm going to get kicked in the face.
Yeah, this was Anakin Obi-Wan.
There you go. There you go. You nerd. I love that reference. Look at that. Joe Aguinaldo pulling out a pop culture reference. Not bad. Not bad, Mr. Aguinaldo.
I have my moments.
That was a good one. That was a really, that's a great one, actually. I can envision that 100%, especially when he's like, he's on fire. And he's just, yeah. That was it. Some people not thrilled with some of the involvement of blood and consumption in that. We'll get to that when we get to the Yebu as well here. But then it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for our main event of the evening. Which, again, this was the match. I don't know. I just don't know. I love Edge. I've always loved Edge. I'm always going to call him Edge because I can't cope with Cope.
Oh, God.
I can't. I can't. He's Edge. He is Edge. Plus, I'm watching the Sweet Daddy Siki documentary, getting ready to put our special together here because I was sick there for a while, so I couldn't do anything. But yeah, his son actually sent me a copy of the documentary, and Edge is in that as well. And he's talking about Siki, and boy, does he look younger. You know, I never thought that Edge looked that old until I've seen him now from then versus 10, 15 years ago, because dear Lord. But
no, I mean, I met him a few times, and definitely, he was, he looks much older now for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, we get to the match here. He gets his song sung to him again. Little off timing here. Not the best. By the way, going back to the Swerve Strickland match. Yeah, if we're going to do these live instrument play-alongs to recorded tracks, can we get the timing right?
Yes, please.
That's just, and you're a music guy. You know what I'm talking about here. Like, it was cool. He was doing all that stuff, the extra drum accompaniment, but he was like a second and a half behind him. And then he finally caught up, and then the song dropped down again. And so when you're getting all the fans there, 11, 12,000, whatever they had for AEW, again, great to see. I love it. But let's just get our timing here. Let's just get
and dear Lord, please don't clap on 1 and 3. That's a drummer reference for
I was gonna say we're going deep now. All right. Getting into the deep cuts here with music lessons here with Mike and Joe. All right. So we get to the match. It is Mox defending the title against Cope Edge. And after everything we saw in all the matches leading up to that, it was like they couldn't top it. And I think that's a fair statement. I don't think they could have topped anything that happened in the matches, especially the 3 matches before them.
No.
Not that it was bad, but again, it proves that you need that breathing space in between sometimes.
Yeah, and that was the thing, because I kind of joked, I made a joke comment on the board that after watching Tony Storm and Mariah May, our Mox and Edge Cope in the back going, okay, what do we got to do to outdo that? And it's okay, let's bring a chainsaw in or something, Well,
it gets down to the point where, remember when you and I used to talk about AEW, and it has gotten better for this, I feel. Hit him with a chair, shoot him with a gun, put him in a meat grinder, kicks out at 2. That was the old thing, right? It wasn't that. It wasn't that. If anything, maybe the MJF Adam Page one was. But their age was showing, I felt, after everything we saw from everybody else. And I hate to say that.
No, I agree. It just you've got a lot of experience in the ring, with Mox and Cope and later on Christian Cage. But I expected more. It didn't have to be over the top violent. It didn't have to be, a death match or anything like that. But I just thought we would have seen, whether it was more storytelling, whether it was, just something it didn't quite get there.
Where I started to fall off, and I mentioned this on the Celebrate Wrestling Facebook page, was when Cope Edge was going for the I got nothing left in me blows, or he's trying to punch Moxley, and Moxley's just standing there this is all you got. And it looked tired. It looked just sad. It looked, It didn't look like the exhausted wrestler giving it his last shot. It was like literally his forearms were sliding off of Moxley. Like it just, and again, this is critiquing to the nth degree here. Was it the worst match? No. But it was one of those things where, again, after seeing everybody kick the living hell out of each other, that it kind of became, okay, these guys are working a match. And then it was time to pull out the smoke and mirrors. And boy, did we get a lot of smoke and mirrors. You're like pulling your hair out, literally.
So, you know what they tried to do? They tried to fit 10 pounds of poop into a 5-pound bag at the end of that match. That's really what it was. Like, I understand that Mox, like, I'm okay with Mox winning. I think that makes sense. Okay. But it was like the way we got there, it was like, oh my God, like you could have just done one of those things and it would have been way more effective than trying to fit all of that in one shot. And I remember like way back when I used to podcast about AEW, that was always my one big complaint, was that they would just try to fit too much stuff. And then it was just like, whatever, you know?
So this is the recap as written by, what page am I at here? I am at nodq.com, okay, because they had kind of a shorter recap of it. I'm going to walk through all of this, okay? Moxley brings a chair into the ring. Referee inadvertently gets knocked out of the ring. Moxley went for the concerto, but Cope avoided it. Okay, so now we're getting into shenanigans a bit here. Then, Wheeler Yuta comes to the ring, teases being conflicted, but then attacks Cope with the running knee. Jay White then runs in to make the save, but accidentally hits Cope with the world title briefcase. Moxley goes for the cover, but Cope kicks out. We're still not done yet. Cope recovered, hit the spear, Moxley kicks out, Cope hits 2 more spears, but Christian pulls out the referee and hits Cope with the briefcase. All right. Christian then cashed in his world title contract and speared Cope, but Cope kicked out. Christian hit the kill switch. Moxley put Christian in the bulldog choke. Christian tried to pin Cope while in the hold, but ended up passing out, giving Moxley the win. You were counting along with fingers there. What were you counting?
So that was like the 5 pieces of shenanigan that ended this match. And again, you could have done one of those things and it would have worked. But when you do all 5 of them, it's like just stop. Like, because that's where I got in the match. Like when Wheeler Yuta came in, okay, cool, right? Great. You know, like conflicted, whatever. He hits Cope. Okay, that's awesome. And then, you know, then Jay White with the briefcase hitting Cope. It's like this is where I'm like, oh my God, really? This is how we're gonna end the match? You know what I mean? And then when Christian Cage came in, I was just like, oh my God, stop. Just stop it right now.
Well, like we said, smoke and mirrors, like Dashing Cody Rhodes coming to the ring, because there was a lot happening in that thing. That's some of our thoughts coming out of it. Overall, I still give the show a yay. I think if you're an AEW fan, you got what AEW fans want out of that show. I think that the amount of physicality, the amount of matches, the crowd was hot for the whole thing, pretty much.
Pretty much.
You know, I mean, you can't look at it as someone who appreciates AEW and say that wasn't a good show. You know, that was the thing. Like I was pretty disappointed in the last 3 minutes of the main event. Sure.
But I can't let that overshadow that this was a good show.
Well, I don't know if any of us were as excited as Leslie Jones was sitting in the second row watching the Swerve Strickland match.
You mean Swerve's mom?
Oh my God, that was so vile. So vile. I love Leslie Jones too.
I do too. I'm not making fun of her. It's just like
she's a shining light, but yeah, it was something else. Nevertheless, she was the graphic for our Yay Boo here. So let's go to your Yay Boo feedback. We start off with Lane Vandergreen. He was the first one in. He says, yay, second half of the show was better than the first. Not that the first half was particularly bad, but I think Okada versus Brody is when it really started hitting that next gear. Really? He thought that was the turning point match. Okay. Then Mariah versus Toni was maximum overdrive. Yeah, there was no coming close to that.
No.
He says, I feared that whatever was left wouldn't be able to follow that performance, but I don't think they tried to. Each match made a strong effort to not be better, but different.
I'm okay with that because again, like even Ospreay Fletcher, it was a good match in a different way than Storm and Mariah, right? So I'm down with that statement.
Devin Axman, who is one of our resident AEW fans, always loves what the guys and girls are putting on there, says, "Yay, I've always said any company, but especially AEW is best when they do things differently. The Women's Championship and Cage match are matches that no other company can or will do." I don't know about that, but I will give him credit here. He says, "Tonight showed just how true that is when the Toni Storm and Mariah May match and the Cage match in 2 contenders for the best match of the year." I could see that to a degree. Especially again for an AEW match, that's what you want to see. He says also, "I'm glad Toni and Mariah got to have the match they wanted, so I have to give it a yay for that. Also, Takeshita and Omega ruled too. I also liked Ricochet and Swerve, and it planted seeds for the future. However, the main event absolutely sucked." Okay. The tag match sucked too, but I wasn't expecting much. Cope is done with doing epic main events. I'm also shocked they didn't shift gears or cut time to try to win the crowd. The 2 matches after the women did this until the main. I'm happy Cope and Christian aren't champs, though. Let's never do a cash-in type again in AEW. That's what they do. This was a Temu cash-in. I will give you that, absolutely. No more cashing in. No more cashing in.
No.
That's the WWE thing. That's what they do.
100%. And that's the thing, like, his point about this was a Temu cash-in. It was like, it was not effective at all.
Cody Brown says, "Boo. Hands down, boo. When did the licking of blood, bloody cages, bloody hands, bloody sweatbands, bloody ring gear become more commonplace than a super kick?" That was the thing. They do get gross in those matches, when Ospreay's licking blood off himself and Fletcher, again, I get they're trying to sell the graphic violence of it all. That's fine. I don't need vampires. He also says, "I get it for shock factor once in a blue moon, but I mean, come on. Also feeling more and more Toni just has his favorites that keep getting over. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Swerve and Ricochet match of the night." Well, I can't disagree with the Swerve and Ricochet match of the night thing. Does it feel like Tony Khan fantasy booking? I mean, it kind of literally is, but do you think that all this was Tony want to do what Tony wants to do?
Okay, yes, but at the same time, what wrestling promoter doesn't do that?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, it does come with the job, right? So if you feel that's the best idea, then yeah, you're going to get who you like over to a degree. Does that help everybody? No, but
no,
it's not wrong. All right, and then Craig Usher says 100% yay. This PLE had everything. This is not a PLE, sir. This is a pay-per-view. The Jericho angle on the pre-show was done well, gained a lot of heat for them. The energy and excitement for the Costco guys and the Rizzlers brings is infectious and so fun. And again, if that's what you like, that's what you like. No problem here. Not one bad match, as well as timing of this show was on as everything built, led into each other, and the event did not drag on. A definite yay for this, and I'm looking forward to the next week of TV to see how this builds. Really enjoyed Hangman versus MJF to open the show, but the show was paced really well and didn't feel like a 4-hour PLE and 1.5-hour pre-show, even though that's exactly what it was. If you are satisfied with that, and that's the one thing I will give AEW credit for, with the action constantly flowing and going match to match to match to match to match, you don't feel like you're sitting there going, oh God, when is the next match going to happen? Which was my big problem with Elimination Chamber. But it's still a long show, especially if you sit down for the pre-show as well. Well, there you have it. Some of your feedback, yay boo, a special edition of the pod here just for those of you that checked out AEW or want to talk about AEW. Appreciate that. Joe, your final thoughts here overall, a yay or a boo?
Yay.
Yeah? Yeah?
Pretty much. Yeah. No, it was a great pay-per-view. I'll admit, like, I was turned off, I guess, a little bit by the end of that main event, but I'm not going to let like 3 minutes of a match ruin what I thought was a really good pay-per-view.
I think that's smart too. I think that a lot of wrestling fans are always programmed to be like, well, it's all depends on what the main event. I'm one of those people. I always believe that the last thing you see defines the show. But I think in an AEW case, especially with a show like what they did this past Sunday, they did enough that even if the main event fell a little flat for you or got a little too fugazi, I think that overall it was still a solid show, and you can't look back at that. Like if I'd gone and spent my money on a ticket there, I would be tired. First of all, I'd be really, really tired.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think I would have left, feeling pretty good about things. So overall, resounding yays from most of you out there. Again, thank you for taking the time to download this extra bonus podcast. We got a bunch more content coming up this week, Joe. I'm doing a ton of extra stuff. Tomorrow, we're going to do another edition of the Indie Spotlight, where we're going to talk to Kyle Sebastian, Cougar Meat Kyle Sebastian, who I know you dig that name already. But when you hear this guy's story, and it's funny, if you're like me and you grew up watching the WWF back in the day, you're going to find out that him, his sister, his dad, and their friends are all very, very famous people in the crowd for a particular wrestler's matches, we'll say. And as soon as he said who they were and I saw the picture of who they were, I was like, oh my God, you were them. And he was just like, he was just a kid. Right. And his sister was even less of a kid then. Like they were very young, but his dad and him are involved with the Lethbridge-based Pure Power Wrestling that I talk about all the time here. And I think it's a good listen, even if you're not obviously in Alberta. But if you're a fan of indie wrestling, if you're a fan of the business, and if you want to realize what it takes to make a successful company happen, that's what these guys have done a really good job of over the last, dozen years or so. And it's really, really a cool story. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Andy Evans will be here on Wednesday, I should say. And then we're going to wrap it up with Tony Gill on Thursday, a.k.a. Ravenous Rohan Raja. He will be defending his PWA Champions Grail against Rich Swann at the return of Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling. They've got a huge card there. A lot of Western Canadian talents, a lot of Eastern Canadian talents, a lot of international talents. Going to be at the Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling shows that happen this weekend with back-to-back pay-per-view as well. It's such a great time to be a wrestling fan, Joe, and we're doing our best to cover all of it right here on Celebrate Wrestling. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
We're going to go back to enjoying some Monday Night Raw now, maybe, and not doing a review about it. But until next time, friends, thanks for listening and letting us do what we do. CelebrateWrestling.com is where you can go to find out all the stuff. Play safe, drive safe. Be seeing ya.